All right, good morning, church. Welcome. As you know, we've been in this series on why. We've been talking about many different topics. Last week, Pastor Krista preached on why hell. And this week, as the graphic shows, we're going to be talking about why faith. If I sound a little weird, I will admit I am sick. I woke up this morning with a scratchy throat and just kind of a little bit of congestion. So, if you've ever had that theory of pastors are holier than everyone, they don't get sick, I'm living proof that pastors get sick. So bear with me this morning. We're going to have a good time. We're going to be talking about why faith. And, you know, that question, a lot of people, they ask this question because, you know, they'll say, okay, so some people have faith, but what is that? Why do I need it? That's good for you, but not for me. I don't want that, okay? And so today, we're going to talk not so much about what is faith, but we're going to talk about why faith. So before we get into that, I'm going to read a quick definition for you. Faith is complete trust or confidence in someone. That's what the number one definition was in the dictionary I looked at. It's complete trust or confidence in someone. And, you know, that's an interesting idea, to put your complete trust into someone, put your complete faith into someone. You know, I'm not going to do that just because someone tells me I need to do that. I'm not going to do that just because someone else thinks it's a good idea. I'm going to do it if I feel like that's what I need to do, if I feel like that's a good decision. But how do you make that evaluation? You know, people come into our churches all the time, and we have this thing where we say, you just need faith. You know, how dare we tell people you need faith and expect that to be easy for them? Now, I'm all about faith. I think we need to encourage people to have faith. In fact, today, there are going to be people in this room who make commitments of faith. But making a faith commitment is not something we should be pressuring people into do without having a good reason why. So today, we're going to be talking about why faith. Faith is an interesting topic because it involves you giving something up. You're not, you're kind of reaching out on this limb of what we call faith. You're not just making a logical decision all the time. A lot of people are afraid to give up control of their lives. They're afraid that they're going to end up becoming a slave to a religion. You know, and that's pretty scary for a lot of people. Being a slave to something, you know, making a decision and having to live with that for the rest of your life. So, you know, before we go any further, I want to make just a couple comments here about ways we all exhibit faith. If you think about an airplane, you know, you're exhibiting faith. Just a while back, we had our entire pastoral team fly down to Texas for a conference, and as I was flying at 38,000 feet above the earth at hundreds of miles an hour in a metal construction of man, I was struck at how easily we put our faith in an airplane. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. Or maybe a car. We all drive, most of us drive cars every single day without giving it a second thought. But we are putting our faith not just in our ability to drive, but in others' abilities to drive. I don't think I need to say that again, but that's pretty crazy. I'm not afraid I'm going to get in a car accident. I'm afraid someone else is going to hit me. You know, another thing we put our faith in is secrets. A lot of people something happens in life, it's like, oh, I got to tell someone, so you confide in someone. Well, what happens? You're putting your faith in that person that they're not going to go out and tell everyone. And then the last thing we put our faith in is relationships. And that's kind of where we're going to spend our time today, is focusing on faith in relationships. Today, I'd like to open with scripture on faith. Hebrews 11:6 says this: it is impossible to please God without faith. And that's kind of why we're going to talk about this, because without faith, it's impossible to please God. And so if you want to be right with God, you have to have faith. So why do you need faith? If you want to please God, you have to have faith. So let's talk about this. It says, anyone who wants to come to Him must believe that God exists and that He rewards those who sincerely seek Him. Verse 7 says, it was by faith that Noah built a large boat to save his family from the flood. He obeyed God who warned him about things that had never happened before. And by his faith, Noah condemned the rest of the world, and he received the righteousness that comes by faith. This theme here, righteousness that comes by faith, is something that is very common in the Bible. If you look at Romans chapter 4, you see how Abraham was made right by his faith. And this whole chapter, Hebrews 11, talks about this. And that's not kind of what we're going to focus on, but it's important to know that righteousness comes by faith. But what really sticks out to me here is that God warned Noah about something that had never happened before. And what we see about the story of Noah is that Noah obeyed. He built this large boat, and sure, that was an act of faith. But just because someone says a flood's coming, you better build a big boat, that doesn't mean I'm going to go out and build a big boat. There's got to be a reason for me to put my faith in what that person said. And so that's kind of what we're going to focus on, is why did Noah obey God? You know, he had faith, but why did he have faith? So I want to just pray and open up this time before God. Father, I thank you for just the ability to come here and to talk about you. And I pray that you would speak to our hearts today, and that you would just show us who you are, and that you would show us why we need faith. So for several years now, I've been going each year on a hike or an adventure. All the guys in our family who are 13 years or older take a trip. We go on a hike, or we do something fun. We've been on golfing adventures. We've been on rafting trips. But 2 years ago, we were on the ocean. Pastor Jared normally goes with us, but he was absent for some reason this year. So anyways, we went to the Washington coast, and we're doing a hike. We did 40 miles of the Washington coast in a week, and it was a good time. We hung out. This is some of the scenery. This is the what is called this rock reef, misery something. Misery. It was bad, but there's this huge stretch of these rocks, and you can see there's water in there. It was. You know, it doesn't look that bad, but when you've got your 40-pound pack on and you're walking through this, and you've been walking for 3 days, it's not fun. Why rocks? Why more rocks? If I see another rock, I'm going to do something I shouldn't do. Then we get to this. This is Yellow Haven, I believe is what it's called. This is a nice stretch of beach. And after the rocks, this is awesome. We're just like, this is how life was meant to be if you're hiking. However, after a while, you're like, those rocks weren't so bad. I'm sick of this sand. It is horrible. And that's pretty much the whole hike. It's rocks, sand, over and over. Yeah, and so if you know anything about the Washington coast, it's not just this straight piece of land. It's kind of jig-jaggedy and kind of messed up. And so what happens is, like this, you can see right here in this picture, you can usually just go around this bend. What happens is some of these bends, even when the tide is out, the water's still so far in you can't go around them, but they're called never rounds. We actually went around one, and that's a story for a whole nother time. But what typically happens is you'll see here, there's this little sign on the tree, and that means the trail goes inland. And another thing interesting about the Washington coast is once you go inland, you go up. And the elevation can change up to 300 feet. And that's just to get around this little bend. So you go up, go a little bit on the trail, and you go down. And so there's these ladders. And these ladders, this one's kind of the mild first ladder. It's like, oh, that's not a big deal. But later on, we get to some ladders like this. And, you know, it's pretty intense. If you're not used to ladders, you're, you know, it's pretty frightening. And so you're going up and down these ladders. When we went, it was muddy, and so the side of the hill, mountain, whatever you call it, if you're from the Midwest or whatever, it's a mountain. Here it's a hill. But this is all muddy, and so the rope's getting muddy. Some of the wooden rungs have been broken, and so it's pretty sketchy, okay? It's not that fun. But by the end of the trip, you know, I'd gotten to where I was pretty comfortable walking up and down these ladders. Another thing interesting about me, this is off of the hiking story, but I'm a painter, so I am pretty used to ladders. But when I first started, I'd go up these ladders, and it'd be kind of sketchy. And so one of the things I would do is I'd grab the ladder and I'd set it down and I'd shake it, I'd make sure it's level. I'd go up a few steps, come back down, make sure it's not going to fall. And so this is when I'm getting started on these ladders. It's pretty scary, especially when you get these 20-foot ladders. You're up at the top, and all of a sudden it shifts. And you're like, oh no! Oh, my whole life just flashed before my eyes. And that has happened. It's pretty freaky. But I've been doing this for a while, so by now I've gotten used to these ladders. I've gotten used to going up and down them. And so what once was what I would call a leap of faith is now quite common and easy for me to do. And so this is kind of what I've noticed about Noah and his life too, is this concept. If you get anything, this is what I want you to get today, is that faith is a product of relationship. It's not just something that we jump out onto this thing of what we call faith, but it's based on relationship. It's a product of relationship. Genesis 6:9 says, "This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on the earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God." He walked in close fellowship with God. It took me a few read-throughs to catch that. And I think it's something most people skip right over. But Noah had a right relationship with God. He had a close fellowship with God. A lot of times when we think about these people of faith, especially Noah, and we're like, oh, God told him to do something. He took this big leap of faith. I'm not so sure it was a big leap of faith. I'm not going to discount Noah and his act of faith, because it definitely was an act of faith. But a big leap, I think it was more of a logical decision based upon his relationship with God. So there's a few things I've noticed, a few elements of a relationship. One would be past experiences. When you look at any relationship you have with your parents, with the sibling, you look at those past experiences, and that's pretty much why you have a relationship, is because you've gone through things together, you've had fun times, you've been through hard times. But these things basically create the picture of what your relationship is like, and so you can look back on those past experiences. Another element of a relationship is trust. You have to have trust. If there's no trust, there's no relationship. That's important to understand now, especially if you're single and you're wanting to date. Trust is a huge one. And so if trust is a major key of a relationship, we have to assume and know that Noah trusted God. And so when you combine these past experiences and this trust, I come down to the third element of a relationship, which is integrity. It's kind of the combination of both of those. It's your track record. You look back upon those past experiences. You look back upon how you trusted God and how He came through for you. And so when you combine all these things, you get the overall picture of what a relationship was. And so if you look at Noah's life and see that he had a close fellowship with God, he had a close relationship with God, we can assume that God had come through for Noah before. It wasn't just like you can imagine talking to God and not, seeing anything back. I don't know exactly what Noah's relationship with God was like. Did he talk audibly to Noah? Did he send an angel? Did he walk with Noah like he did with Abraham? We don't know exactly how that relationship, what it looked like, but we know that it was close. I think it's pretty hard to have a close relationship with someone if there's nothing there. Okay, so that's just so important to know this, that Noah's relationship with God played a huge factor into why Noah had faith in God. I think there's also a big link here kind of between faith and between hope. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen." It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. That's kind of the biblical definition of faith. When we have faith, we're confident about what we're hoping for, about what we believe God has said. If you look at other people of faith throughout the Christian walk, a lot of times you're like, those people have faith. They know what they want. They know what God has told them. And so we assume, or we just declare, yep, that's faith. But in our own lives, do we have faith? Are we hoping that God's going to come through for us so that what God has promised to do for us is going to actually happen? So today, you may be in this place and say, you know what, I don't have this faith. Coming into this place today, I'm not a person of faith. And I don't even know if I should have faith. I don't even know, why do I need faith? I just want to tell you, first of all, you may not have the answer, but you can have faith in the one who does. Yeah. If you look at Noah's life, I don't think he always knew the answer. In fact, when God told him to build an ark and that it was going to flood, I don't even think Noah could totally comprehend that decision, what was about to happen. I can look back at my life and there's things that, God has told me through, reading the scripture. I'm like, okay, I get that, I can understand, but when it comes down to it, I don't fully understand until after it. I can look back on that event. I can see how God came through for me. I think that's true for many of us. So Noah had faith in God even when he didn't have reason to have faith in God. It says that about Abraham in Romans chapter 4. Abraham kept on believing even when there was no reason to hope, even when there was no reason to believe. And same thing is true about Noah. He didn't have any reason that God had to save him. God could have destroyed Noah along with everyone else. He could have made a whole new Adam, a whole new Eve, and started over. But he chose to save Noah. And Noah had faith in God that he would save him. Your level of faith is not determined by how big of a risk you're taking, but rather how much you are trusting. You see, I could go out and make the biggest leap of faith ever, and that wouldn't mean I'm a person of faith. It probably would just mean that I'm stupid. It's not about how big of a risk you're taking, but it's how much you're trusting. How much are you trusting God to come through for you? You may only be making a small jump, maybe a really small act of faith. Some people maybe wouldn't even consider it an act of faith. But you're trusting God with your whole heart. And that's what matters in these acts of faith. So in closing, if you want to see the impossible, if you want to see the miraculous, if you want to see awesome things happen in your life, you have to give God room to work in your life. Today I believe that there are several commitments of faith people want to make. If you would bow your heads with me, I'm going to close in a minute here. The first is this. Maybe you're in this place and you want to make a commitment to Christ for the first time. You've been coming a few times to this church. You've realized, I am lost without God. I need to make a commitment of faith. Today we want to pray with you. If that's you, I would just invite you to raise a hand. I would like to just see who you are so I can know who you are. I can pray for you. We've got some leaders up here later this morning who want to pray with you. Second, you might be wanting to recommit your life to Christ. Maybe you have made a commitment of faith before, but today you've realized you haven't been living your faith out. You haven't been living with putting your trust in God. If that's you, again, I'd just like you to raise your hand so we know who you are. We'd love to pray with you. Lastly is this, before I pray, there's some of you who aren't ready to make a commitment of faith like that. You're not ready to say, yeah, I put my whole heart in Jesus. And you know what? I'm not going to pressure you into that today. But what I want to encourage you to do is make a commitment of faith as simple as saying this. Yeah, I will come back next week. I will come back as we continue this series in why faith, in why. Next week we're going to talk about why God's love. And so I want you to come back. Make that commitment to either come back or do something like that. All right, so God, I thank you for my friends here today. I thank you for the commitments of faith they're making. And God, I pray that as we leave this place, you would go with them. And God, you would teach them to grow in their faith. Amen.
Amen.